Hi, I'm Krishna. I'm a senior at Lexington High School, and I've done a lot of computer science and computer science related stuff. So I started learning computer science in like middle school, and I took a KTBYTE summer camp and like much more classes after that. And like Bessie here, I did some research in both computer science and computational like, biology. And next year I'm headed up to Harvard, and I'm really interested in like applications of computer science to many different fields. Yes.
Thanks. I'm Willie, currently a sophomore at MIT. I went in thinking I would do computer science. I had helped out here at KTBYTE as an instructor teaching lessons. But then I took another route, and I ended up pursuing something that sort of blended computer science with more of a humanities side. I went with digital media, which is a writing subject, and I also am going for a design minor, which involves sort of graphic design and computation. It's technically part of architecture, but I think it's an exciting blend of art and science and technology, and where computer science can open up new fields of discovery.
Hey, I'm Betsy. I go to Lexington High. I'm a senior right now. I also started learning computer science at KTBYTE in middle school, and I started doing like sort of competition computer science, so like USACO. From there, it was just like the doors that opened were just so many. I was able to apply CS to research like Krishna did. I was able to use it to help out my community, so I do a lot of community service that revolves around web development. And currently I'm helping Patrick organize a hackathon that uses, like, I use my computer science skills for that, but it's also taught me so many things outside of CS itself. Like, we'll talk a lot more about that later, but it's been super cool.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kristen. I am a senior at AMSA Charter School in Marlborough. I started learning CS in middle school as well, but not through KTBYTE. I went to KTBYTE camp the summer before my freshman year, but before that, my school is actually a math and science academy, so like we have computer science curriculum starting in 6th grade. So I started learning CS then, and then I went to the KTBYTE camp for my freshman year, and that's kind of what really got me interested in CS. From there, I went to a few summer camps that I was able to use CS at. Like, we programmed sailboats to sail themselves, and that was really cool. Now I'm a TA at KTBYTE, which is pretty awesome. So in terms of what I'm planning to use CS for in my future, I'm going to Cornell next year. I'm majoring in mechanical engineering and English, but I'm interested in researching like self-driving cars, and that uses a lot of machine learning. I actually took a machine learning class last semester here, so I'm excited to see how my CS knowledge can help me in that field.
I'm Vishnu. I'm a senior at BB&N, and I started learning CS in 8th grade at KTBYTE as well, and I think the reason I was first really kind of like reluctant to learn, but my dad's a hardware engineer and he really pushed me to do it, and then I just kind of fell in love with it. And I think in college I want to major in CS and English too, so I don't know, I think they're two different subjects, but I like the different ways they help you think, and I really fell in love with CS because it's kind of abstract, kind of like math, and I love math as well, but like it takes that abstraction and it allows you to apply that to many practical applications. So I build a lot of apps, I do research as well, and it's been really fun. So yeah.
I'm Patrick. I go to AMSA Charter School, like my sister Kristen. My beginnings in CS are similar to Kristen. My school teaches CS in middle school, so I took their introductory Python courses, but I didn't like it until I started to take classes at KTBYTE. So I took my first summer camp the summer before 9th grade, and I started to be a TA, and then I was lucky enough to have instructed some classes as well. My love of CS generally comes from the application of CS into other fields. So as someone who's very interested in biology, protein folding, even neuroscience, I've used computational methods in research in both protein folding and neuroscience. And another thing that I generally use CS a lot with is entrepreneurship. Betsy said, as we will talk about later, about hackathons. So I've quite come to appreciate CS's easy applicability into other fields. That's actually quite powerful.
Just by the way, some of you on the audio stream online are asking about the video. We actually have two video streams. One is the live streaming, and then one is like a secondary window that we're recording for an audience afterwards. So you might want to resize the windows to make sure that the live video, which should be at the top of the window, is a little bit bigger. One of them will be lagged behind the other, so I apologize for that. But in any case, one of the questions that we got a lot from people online was what kind of activities you did in high school, and like not just maybe like a specific programming competition, but even things that were outside of programming that you feel like, you know, benefited from the kind of problem-solving skills you learned, or, you know, or maybe even the connections and friendships you made. So does anyone want to start with that, or we can just go in a circle? Okay.
So I mentioned that I did research. That's probably one of the biggest things I did through the MIT Primes program, like Betsy, if you've heard of that. I was also captain of my school's computer science club, and we do stuff from competitions like USICO, preparing for that, doing stuff like the ACSL competition, to just other activities related to computer science. Outside of computer science, well, actually within computer science too, I also, this past year, I also helped organize a hackathon at Lexington High School called LexHack. So, but outside of computer science, one of my biggest things was quiz bowl and quiz show related things. I'm on my school's high school quiz show team and quiz bowl teams, and that kind of is a good way to combine like knowledge in like science and stuff with learning, you know, history and literature and like things from like across the spectrum of knowledge. Also my school's tennis team. So although I'm probably going to major in computer science in college, I definitely like learning about things from across the spectrum of knowledge. Like, for example, I'm really interested in history, and all that stuff kind of contributes to being quiz show. And I don't know, so like, although my focus has kind of been in science and computer science, I have some experience in other things too. Cool.
I, sort of like Kristen, took a fairly STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math-minded approach through high school. I was on my school's science team, where I was bummed to discover that it was not the time. There were no programming parts of the competition. We were in the Science Olympiad. There is now, I've heard, but it was a little too early before my time. I was interested in computer science to the degree that I discovered that my school did not have a computer science club that I would join. So I got a friend together and we started one. It was fairly sizable, and it's pretty much what I stuck with throughout all the years of high school. Eventually, I overhauled it to bring more of an entrepreneurship focus about how to manage and work in projects and deliver a final product. I guess the biggest takeaway is that if you're really passionate about a subject that's interesting to you and you would like to pursue it, the biggest barrier to pursuing it, I would say, is finding the right people and the right resources. I guess it seemed like I've always found time outside of classes and schoolwork to write code. I don't think this is the case for most people, but it definitely is important to sort of keep track of what's important to you and what can you offer to the community around you, as well as.
And Willie, what was the group called? Was it Idea Lab, or?
Yes, it began as Computer Science Club, but then evolved into Idea Lab.
Okay, at Acton Boston.
At Acton Boston.
Okay.
Yeah, so similar to Krishna, I did MIT Primes. I actually worked in the same lab.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So I joined Primes in sophomore year, and I think one of the biggest differences it made for me was it was just such a powerful application of CS. Like I was able to take like edit distance, which is an algorithm I learned from KTBYTE, and then apply that towards matching different features between two tracks of the genome to search for differences. And it was a moment where I was like, wow, I can use like whatever field I go, like whatever field anyone goes into, the computer science can be applied in such effective ways. What was the question? It was asking about other
Activities and clubs.
That's a very broad question. Other than that, I can help with community service.
Sure.
So, I think freshman year was when I started helping. Okay, so I received a request at one point to build a website for a local community nonprofit organization. I think it was the Chinese American Association of Lexington. And at that point I had not built a website before, or at least not like a functional website before. But I realized, so like one thing that crossed my mind, I attempted to build them something, and it was pretty bad. But like after I went through that process, I realized I had learned so much about building websites, just having that opportunity to build something for a purpose. And afterwards, I started like learning more about web development on my own and reaching out to other like nonprofit community organizations, and was like, okay, so this is a thing I can do, and this is like a type of community service that really applies the specific skills I know, and I learned so much more from this than I could from like pulling out weeds. I mean, pulling out weeds is great too, but it's personal preference. I really enjoyed doing this. I think I learned I learned a lot from it. So end of some school year, I think it was either freshman or sophomore year, I got together with some friends and we basically formed a team to continue doing this kind of activity, and yeah, that's been really cool.
Okay, we're going down the line, right? Okay, so so CS-related extracurricular things I've done, I guess. So right after I did my first KTBYTE camp, I was like really into coding because I made a Mario game, and that was probably the biggest accomplishment of my life up to that point. I played that game nonstop. Yeah. Anyway, so I was really looking for other CS things to do. I took Java freshman year in school, but I was still, that summer I wanted something to do, and my parents found this like engineering summer camp, and I was like, this sounds awesome. And that was the one that I was talking about before, where we programmed sailboats to sail themselves. So I went in there like not knowing what to expect really, because we were using Arduino, so that was a new language for me to learn, but it's really cool. Not only did I learn how to like program in that, we also learned how to do like a lot of hardware stuff too. So I learned how to solder and do like circuitry and stuff. So that was really awesome. That kind of inspired me to look for like engineering clubs at my school. So we had this club called 1080 when I was there, and I hadn't really heard what it was, but it was basically like building RC cars and racing them, which sounds kind of lame, but it was really cool, okay? I liked it a lot. So I joined, and because I knew how to code and a lot of my teammates didn't know how to code, I actually got put in charge of like the project team. So it's called like the data-driven design project or whatever, but basically the point was RC cars come with like a stock controller that's upright, but it's really hard to learn how to use for new team members. So because everyone's used like a video game controller at some point, we wanted to like basically hack a video game controller to control the RC car with. So I got put in charge of that. We worked on it for a while. There was a lot of fails, but there was also some success, and we got it to work eventually, and it was really cool. And now I'm captain of the racing team, and now we don't just do RC cars. This year we're actually doing, like, it's called Electrathon, so we actually are building a real go-kart, and we're racing that. The competition is this Friday. It's going to be fun. I can't drive because I'm too tall, but that's beside the point. So that CS kind of really put me into the position where I had a leadership place on that team, and then I eventually became captain. So that was cool. In terms of non-CS extracurriculars I do, I play violin. I'm in BYS, Boston Youth Symphony with Patrick. That's who was in it too. R.I.P. I sing. I dance. I volunteer at the library a lot. And I used to play volleyball and track, but then I kind of had way too much on my plate, so I kind of settled down a little bit. And I also work at KTBYTE, so that's a CS thing. Okay.
All right. So I guess CS-related stuff. I also did MIT Primes, and I was doing like more like just CS-related stuff, specifically cybersecurity and side channel attacks. And then so then I guess that's research, but like more the kind of fun stuff. Not to say research isn't fun, but it's I'd say more like tedious and more like regimented. And so I'm part of this club that I started with my bud called Bad Club, and it's not, we don't get mad and throw things. It actually stands for mobile app development, and we make like apps. So one of them was for our school, and it was a scheduling app, and so that's been fun. And then I also do robotics, and robotics, there's like a lot of CS you can apply, and so one of the facets was this thing called Zero Robotics, which is primarily code-based. It's simulation robotics, and then there's another called Vex, and I did both, mostly coding, so I'm not a hardware guy, even though I like building things, but don't worry about it. And then besides, I also do math team stuff, but and there's some competitions where like you use CS in math where they allow you to, so that's been fun too. And then outside of that, I do debate, and I was a editor for my school paper, and I'd say that like it's good to try like different things because you'll realize that like they have a lot to teach you, and like especially being an editor, also like I realized like, oh, like our school newspaper could potentially use an app, so like my friend and I are now working on that too, so like it gives you more opportunities to apply CS, but also there's a lot to learn from the various different things, so I'd say like try different things.
Okay. Can you repeat the question so I...
Activities and extracurriculars.
That relate to CS or
just, you know, you feel like had some tangential benefit, yeah.
Okay.
Or doesn't relate if you have a story, but
Okay.
just share your
We
experience.
can talk about academics too, like just like classes.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure. So I think that as you start to progress through your academic career, especially starting in freshman year or working through senior year, the classes you take and what you spend your time doing and prioritizing really shapes your logical skills, your analytical skills, and sort of your perception of the world around you. And computer science, I felt, was extremely useful for me in the fact that it sort of tailored my brain processes to be more logical, more analytical, and many times I feel more efficient. There are many very simple ideas and quite beautiful at the same time that you learn from CS, and it can start as something as easy as a binary search, and you'd like be extremely impressed to see like all of the areas where a binary search could be applied. It's not just like going through a list. Like I can't remember a specific instance, but like if something is going wrong and you have a lot of things to go through, then like an idea like that where you just cut in half until you find the thing is like something that's very effective. And then as you start to build upon more and more complicated ideas like graph theory, sort of fastest transversal algorithms, how that applies to your everyday life can sometimes be very interesting. And I often play like mini games with myself about like the fastest routes to go through my house while like maximizing the stuff I pick up along the way so that like I can shave 5 seconds off to be on time when I go to school.
Do you really do that though?
Yeah.
I've unfortunately been guilty of that. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was like a pretty not, I don't know, large-scale effect. But especially for people that are interested in STEM and the humanities, CS really influenced me to be very precise in my thinking, very precise in how I communicate my ideas. And for skills like math and for writing, I feel like that makes things much more powerful.
Okay.
Actually, I have a thought. So sort of building off of that, so CS, I think having learned sort of that way of thinking Patrick was talking about earlier has definitely helped me in my classes that I have taken in school beyond that point. For instance, when I first took calculus at my school, I saw a lot of people struggling with how do you do the integrals, all the things. But I just remember when I started learning that, I was like, oh my god, it's just a for loop, and every loop instance you just you add them up, and I think firstly that made it easier for me to grasp the concept because it was something I'd worked with so frequently. It's the most basic part of one of the most basic parts of programming, but also it just made it so satisfying. Once you have that familiarity and it's something that you know and you like, and you're able to connect that and apply that over different topics. I think it made calculus a lot more happier for me.
One of the things that I'm getting, especially if I were a viewer, is that you guys are doing a lot of things, and it sounds intimidating, honestly. And the question is, how do you balance your time, but also, how much time does all this stuff take? Do you get any sleep? What do you do to even have time to try these things, especially going to competitive schools where the academic load itself is already so dreadful?
I can,
yeah.
Or
okay, yeah.
So I guess you mentioned sleep at first. It's a lot of people in school keep saying, I'm sure viewers, if they're in high school, have encountered this. People try to compete to see how late they kind of sleep, and sleep is much more very, very important because it helps your performance on stuff in school. And I guess all of us have listed a lot of different things that we do, and it does definitely seem intimidating as someone going into high school. But for me, and I suspect for a lot of people here too, it's not, at least I didn't really go searching out stuff to build a list. I did one thing, maybe I took a computer science class, or I went to this club, and then it organically led to something else. Or my friends were doing this one extracurricular, and it organically led to this other thing. For example, computer science club I've met people in the computer science club that have told me about research, and I've used those lessons in my research, for example. And it does seem very intimidating for a person going in that, hey, all these seniors who are going to colleges and stuff take on an immense load. But what I would advise for someone, for a freshman or a sophomore or someone younger, is don't just try to build your resume by adding discrete things to your resume, but do look at one thing you're interested in or a couple things you're interested in, and pursue those kind of to the best of your ability, and they'll organically lead to other opportunities. And if you keep your eye out for other opportunities, they'll arise from things you've been doing. So I guess to capital, doing a large list of things to apply to college will happen if you just keep your eye for opportunities. It's not like you have to go. It's not like you're behind if you don't have this huge laundry list in freshman year.
I'm going to present an alternative view, which is, I completely agree with you. You should never try to build your resume. But from people up here who seems like we've all done a lot, I feel like one of my regrets is that I did too much. So as you look at stuff, I feel like it's very good to take even half an hour to an hour per day and sit and think, and as cheesy as it sounds, even just meditate and think what makes me happy, why am I doing what I'm doing, and what is my future plan for this? And if you concentrate very, very hard on 2 or 3 activities, and you become very good in those activities, it will look much better than somebody who has scrambled their whole life to do 14 different things, kind of mediocrely, and you will also be much happier. And so I don't think I was the person who did 14 different things. I probably had the same problem as Krishna, which was that I did a couple of things, and then my friends asked me to do X, Y, Z, and I'm really bad at saying no. So I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And then sort of my time gets allocated. But I think one of, I guess, not humbly, one of my greatest skills is really time management. So I am definitely very oriented, like, for those of you who maybe play an instrument, which is quite common, effective practicing is also a very good way to lead your life, which is before you sit down, you should always have a plan, right? So when I try to spend time, I always try to think, what is my plan for these 2 hours? And in that way, you're able to accomplish a lot more. And the other advice I have is, if your schedule does need to be busy, I suggest you make your schedule as varied as possible so that it gives your brain sort of rigor in different environments, right? So if you go to sports right after school, it's a sort of very different field, very different sort of interactions than if you go home and then like practice clarinet for a couple hours, and then if you do schoolwork, and then if you do like coding. It trains your brain in very different ways, and I also think that the variety will help you to be a lot happier.
Going off of that, I'm kind of the person who did 14 different things, and like in terms of time management, I don't really have a lot of free time at all because I'm always just doing something or something else. But the thing was, it wasn't like I just did everything just to do it. It's because I actually like everything I do. And like Patrick said, I have a hard time like quitting something, so I just kind of continued doing everything, even though that kind of made me like ridiculously busy. I think, like, I totally agree with what he said. It's good to have that variety because I'm not always just doing schoolwork or like practicing or whatever. It's just I have like a rotating schedule, so I'm always doing something different, and it keeps me interested. And honestly, if I had more free time, I'd probably just waste it. So it's good that I'm busy all the time. In terms of time management, I feel like if you are taking on a lot of stuff, you will have a lot of late nights. And like Krishna said, sleep is very important. I found there was a period of time in my junior year when I stayed up until like 3 every single night for like a week. This was before AP exams. And that was just because I was self-studying some APs, and I didn't look at any of the material until like 2 weeks before, so I learned like the entire textbook. Like the week before, would not recommend. If you are self-studying APs, please schedule out the material like over the course of a few months at least so you can cover everything. I happen to study very well by cramming. Not everyone can succeed that way. So back to my point though. I was staying up until like 3 or 4, getting like 2 hours of sleep a night, and I basically died one day. I like went to the nurse, and I was like pretty much deceased for like the whole day. The nurse was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm just trying to learn 3 course loads in one night." She was like, "Okay, well you need to not do anything for like 2 days," which kind of messed up my whole entire schedule. So basically, I guess my point is, please get some sleep. Okay, the average like teenager needs 7 hours of sleep a night. Most of you will not be getting 7 hours of sleep a night, but at least try to aim for 6 because sleep is very important. Okay.
All right, I will go on the topic of sleep. So I may be an outcast here because I know at my school, like, I have a friend who, like, basically every night is up till 3, and I'm like, what are you doing? Because I'm a very, like, and this is consistently, it's not just like every 2 weeks, he'll just be like up at 3 a.m. and like, I like ask him what he's doing, and like, he's a very smart guy. And so I actually don't know what he's doing. But I can tell you, like, I for like most of my high school, I've been getting like pretty good sleep. Like, I go to bed, like my freshman and sophomore year, I went to bed at like 8 o'clock, and I got like 10 hours of sleep, and junior year it was like 10 p.m. and I got like 8 hours of sleep. And senior year, I'm rocking some high numbers. So. I think sleep. It's not like I'm out there chasing sleep. It's like there are days where I'm like, okay, I really care about this. I want to get this done. And there are other days where I'm like I can sit up and like, I don't know. I'm just not a procrastinator. Like, I see what I need to do. I kind of get it done, and I think obviously like there's a lot of activities you have to juggle and balance, and I just reiterate that like having that kind of dynamic and that you're switching up what you're doing makes it so like you're streamlining the process. Like you don't want to be coding for like 6 hours a day unless it's like a hackathon or like it's like you want to be doing that. But like you need to vary up your schedule, and I think like one of the things that's worked for me is kind of just like, as was said before, just like really planning out what you want to do. And if you set like the goal, like, hey, like I want to go to bed at 10 o'clock today and get 8 hours of sleep and just be like a happy guy, like that's what I want to do. And I'm just going to add here too, like blue light, okay? Don't use your phone before you go to bed. One habit that I've gotten into is I read for like half an hour or 20 minutes before I go to bed, and I find just like having kind of like no electronics and just kind of sitting down and relaxing really helps me go to sleep and improves my quality of sleep. And getting sleep makes you like a happier person, and you know, like I can guarantee that. And so like just get some sleep, you know, read some books, and I think it'll be all set.
Can I just build off that? I, like you, I had a pretty much similar experience to you. I slept maybe like 10:30, 11 latest, like for most of my high school career, even during like the busiest weeks. And we've talked a bit about our extracurriculars, but the number one most important thing if your goal is to get into like college is to get good, to perform well in school. And the only way to do that is to get a good amount of sleep every night. From personal anecdotal experience, I found that, myself included, the people who really tend to be on top of their like school stuff, like tests, and tend to perform well in those things, are people who get sleep at 10:30 rather than people who stay up till 2. And if you have that mindset, like sure, definitely extracurriculars are important, and everyone here has done an impressive amount of them. And but getting good, performing well in school is the number one thing. And if you treat it as your priority, you will have to get like 7, 8 hours of sleep every night. So that is very, very important, like so much more important than doing 20 different extracurriculars. So just keep that in mind if you find yourself consistently sleeping at 2 a.m., that you should definitely like think about how something. Yeah.
So another question that was probably the most popular question on the feed, and it's a bit of a lightning rod question, is how did specific activities, and people asked about the USA Computing Olympiad, about AP Computer Science, how did specific activities contribute perhaps towards the college applications process? And I say it's a bit of a tricky question because we don't really know the answer to that question. And simultaneously, you know, the college applications process it's not completely quantitative, right? So, but can you guys maybe talk about not just like how much it helped, but what are those activities and what's the general kind of positives and negatives you feel like in the context of college? So does anyone want to start with maybe the USICO or AP?
Yeah, I can talk about USICO.
Yeah.
So I think right now the USICO is, at least for me, it was a difficult competition. And the only thing that I felt like was that as a national competition, colleges give it merit, right? So it's one of the things that you can do that's like, for me, I found it quite fun. But if you do as a sort of like, I'd like to get some type of national level accomplishment on my plate, then the USICO is something good to do for that. APCS as part of coursework, I think that in general for the college admissions process, they want to see that you're challenging yourself. And that's anywhere from, depending on what type of student you are and how you've done before, that can be anywhere from 4 APs to crazy people who have done like 23. I myself did 6 APs in high school. Whatever number works for you, or you're challenging yourself and you still have the time to do other things that are important to you, is the number that you should take. There's no like number of APs or an AP class that will get you into college. But I think in terms of other CS activities, a lot of us here have done research with computer science. And I think the reason why the percentage is so high is because research into CS has a very low barrier to entry, but very impressive end results. So the learning curve to get into something like CS research is really not that difficult as compared to maybe like number theory research or like very complicated wet lab techniques or something like that. In fact, if you're looking for research positions, many people will take a computational analyst as opposed to a sort of like research lab intern because they don't actually have to train you in like, here is pipette, or like, this is monkey, you cannot touch monkey. So I would say that it's very easily applied and the end results are often very beautiful and very powerful.
Yeah, like I guess part of the question, the meta question is like, how much optimization did you have to do when thinking about college? Are there activities like, did anybody here think, oh, math is hard and I don't know if I could actually succeed in it or something like that?
Yeah, so like you should kind of like do not a huge amount of things, but like try to be like really good at them. I think there's 3 people here, myself included, who did research, and maybe we can talk about that a bit. I did. Well, 3 of us did research to the MIT Prime's research program, which is like a very selective program that has things in. Oh, you too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I forgot to mention that.
yeah. So 4 of us. So it has research things in both math and computer science and also computational biology. So my first year, I did a pure theoretical computer science project in cryptography and cloud security, and my second year, I did a project in computational biology, and I feel like doing something like that, like doing computer science research, is pretty accessible for someone who's. It's like very hard to get into these programs. Like MIT Prime's, like is pretty selective. But if you've done something like KTBYTE classes, like a bunch of them, maybe up to a certain level, and maybe done maybe computer science also, like it's actually you don't have to learn. You don't have to like be a grad student to do that kind of research, and it's. As opposed, like learning computer science and doing contests is great. I actually did used to go for a bit, but I just stopped like my sophomore year because I didn't really find it the best use of my time. I wanted to focus kind of more on research because research is something that like very few people actually do, and it's like super interesting. Like rather than just reading knowledge out of a textbook, you're creating new knowledge, and you're using knowledge you learn in class and that you learn in computer science classes, and just applying it to a real-world problem and like working alongside real researchers and professors and grad students and everything.
You did place in the USICO though, right?
I got like silver, but I stopped my like sophomore year, so I didn't really want to continue that as a like I wanted to devote most of my time to other things.
Mm-hmm.
Like again, if you have the opportunity to do research, I highly recommend it because. First of all, if you're just looking at the resume sort of thing, it is very impressive I assume it is very impressive to college admissions officers, but mostly to yourself, it teaches you a completely new way of thinking because the questions you try to answer don't have an answer. You can't just look up the answer to the research problem you're trying to solve. So you tend to approach problems a different way, and that helps you in all sorts of areas.
Anybody else want to tap up?
I guess going a little bit off the direction of research, I guess if you were to put yourself in the position of the admissions officer and you've picked up somebody's sheet and you're looking through it, okay, grades, okay, GPA, extracurriculars, this is a long laundry list, okay, I'm going to skip that, here are like your test scores, and then you get to the essay. And I think for me, one of the things that pushed my application was the essay. It's 500 words, I think, and 600. 650. It's a while ago. Sorry, but I still remember writing about, as you could probably guessed it, computer science, and out of all the other numbers, figures, and stats and sentences that you can write, the essay on your college application is one place where you can let your own personality shine through. And I guess I would imagine that for someone who's getting to know you, reading through a well-written and very personal piece of text will give them a better sense of who you are than looking at your stats.
Yeah, sort of going back to what you said and what Christian was saying earlier about primes, I think one of the cool things about CS is that if you really enjoy computer science, the kind of doors it opens for you and the kind of opportunities are like, they're really unique, and it just opens so many doors. Like for instance, primes. I worked with sort of with Krishna in a computational biology lab. And my knowledge when I entered was probably like 90% CS and 10% biology. And I was able to work with these really cool biological ideas just because basically of the CS knowledge. If it was the other way around, 90% biology, 10% CS, I would be doing other things. But I know I wouldn't have had this particular opportunity, which was really cool to me. And I also ended up writing about that experience as one of my college essays.
Same with me.
Yeah.
Research gives you so much to talk about.
Also, learning lab is just awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me flip the table because one of the questions was about, that came before the seminar, was about entrepreneurship, and kind of on this, almost on the left side of this panel, I guess right side from their perspective, we have some people who've done more kind of like business-oriented tasks as well, right? Do you guys want to talk a little bit about that, maybe?
What would you like us to focus on?
I don't know. What have you done?
Sure. So my experience with entrepreneurship started in the beginning of high school, where I entered into a startup accelerator. So that was I was in 9th grade, and I was very young. And so that was sort of my first start with entrepreneurship. Last year, as a junior, I was on sort of the founding team for a hackathon called Metro Hacks. And a hackathon, at least in my opinion, is like a startup, but incredibly more difficult. And I can list reasons why. One of which is most startups have some type of product that they sell, and usually that product is accessible like 365 days a year. A hackathon, my product is for 24 hours, and after that it's gone.
Do you want to define more of a hackathon? If
Sure.
Viewers don't know the term?
Yes, yeah, that's actually good. Thank you, Willie. So a hackathon is an event that goes usually anywhere from 12 to 48 hours, where people of all backgrounds in computer science and technology and entrepreneurship come together. They think of a problem that they'd like to solve or something that they would like to create. It can be very software-oriented, very hardware-oriented. And for that time period, they go to workshops where people, usually from like gigantic technology companies like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, come to lead workshops. And it's like, if you have never coded an iOS app before, there'll be like a workshop on that where they teach you how to do it. Or if you're like very high-powered CS person, they'll be like developing the cutting edge of machine learning algorithms. So like there's definitely a range in there for workshops. There are mentors usually to help you sort of get past problems. Like everybody hits that wall in their project, and there are mentors to help you get around that. And then usually there's some type of like competition and prizes at the end. Like you've done good, now you can walk home with like a $50 Amazon card, or like prizes that are really cool. Usually like quadcopters, sometimes for like big hackathons like Pen Apps, they give out like Oculus headsets. So that's, was that a good explanation? Okay.
Well, it's like also interesting because one of the questions ties into that. So I don't know if you had anything you want to say about entrepreneurship before I change it. No. Okay. Yes.
Well, I'll just say like I think like one of the things about CS is it doesn't have to be like an alone thing. Like even in research or even in projects, like you're doing it and collaborating with other people who are hopefully passionate about what you're trying to do. And so if you find friends who are passionate, like get together and make something. And so I think that's really cool. And like some of my favorite stuff has been like in classes is been like just projects where they're like, hey, like we're done teaching you guys. Why don't you go out and do something with what we've taught you? And so, and do it with other people because you're going to learn from them and you have things to teach them. And when you do it as a team, it really kind of helps you make some cool stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So anecdote time. Like you're talking about, a lot of you are talking about activities and research and hackathons. The nitty gritty is you're for a hackathon sending out invites and you're trying to get sponsors. And for the research, you're trying to get your build environment to work and you're trying to make sure that you don't know how to compile something or whatever. Like as part of the actual nitty-gritty, what are some things that are there any surprising stories you have, or things that you didn't expect would be difficult, or things that you didn't expect would be really easy, or things that were unrelated to computer science that suddenly turned out to be really related, or you're using this tool that suddenly you couldn't understand because of something you took from some other domain? Kind of what are the surprises? Yeah.
I can talk about this because so I joined the Metro Hacks organizing team this year, and so I joined this because, firstly, I know Patrick, and also because I have the CS background and I've attended a lot of hackathons. And so when I started organizing this, I realized most of the things I'd be doing would not be coding or just like research similar to Primes. I got in, and I was one of the first things that happened to me was like, what the heck are meeting minutes? Like, what are fiscal quarters? How do I write a budget? I think I was asked to write a budget like pretty soon off, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So over the course of the last
You did very well.
Thank you. So over the course of the last like half year, I've been learning all these like really incredible things. I've been working with talking about unexpected things. I probably spent like a solid 2 weeks figuring out how to design and order around 300 sweaters, which is a much more involved process than it sounds like. But like all these things, like the writing budgets, how do we attract sponsors? How do we like deal with logistics of over like 250 people? What if they're coming from different places? What if they want to come at different times? These are skills that before I had not only underestimated, and I just had zero experience in, and being able to have this experience of working on the hackathon has taught me so many more things that I can explain in this sort of short time. But it's been an incredible experience, and yeah, I honestly would not have gotten this chance if I hadn't joined.
Okay. Kristen, were you going to say something? Okay.
No.
Okay.
Anybody else want cool experiences?
Well, yeah. Well, this came about in my first year of. It's not so much like a cool experience as much like more like an important kind of lesson that I learned. This came about in my first year of doing MIT Primes research, and it definitely applies to everything in academics, and I'm sure it'll apply in college and whatever. Is that my first year in Primes we were working on this a partner and I were working on this data structure related to cloud security, and this 1 week over the summer. And like the level of programming we had to do was pretty high for what I'd learned at the time, so I was constantly learning new things. 1 week over the summer, we split our tasks for coding this like a simulation of this algorithm, and I was kind of very stuck on this one my task, and I kind of wanted to prove myself in a way. So I tried to work on this thing just by myself without asking for help for a few days, and then because I was making no headway, I kind of reluctantly asked for help from my mentor, and my partner, and working together, we were able to solve this issue, and program this task much faster than I could have alone. So a very important lesson is to ask for help, even when you feel like you have to prove yourself, but you really don't, because this will definitely apply in classes in high school, in different extracurriculars like research, because asking for help and collaborating isn't necessarily it's not like at all showing like weakness, but it shows that you're good at communicating with other people, and you know when to advocate for yourself. So that's, I guess, a lesson I learned.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, I struggle with asking for help too, and doing research and stuff, it's been very humbling in that sense. So I think that's very good. I remember, if this is an anecdote, so I remember one time it was research, and we were writing a C program, or I was writing a C program to send server packets back and forth, and then I was looking at how many packets were sent or something, and it would always be a negative number, and I'd never learned C before, so this is my first time learning C. I should have known this, but I was just okay, why are these numbers negative? They were big numbers too, so maybe you guys know what's happening right now. They were really big numbers, and at one point they were really big numbers, and at one point the numbers would just become negative. They were the same numbers, but they were just negative. I was like, wait, I didn't do anything. Like, what happened? And so, like, I was pondering this for, like, a long time. Like, I was, like, perplexing, like, whether my computer was broken. Like, and then at some point, I was just like, all right, I'm going to Stack Overflow this. And so, like, I went to the gods at Stack Overflow, and I said, like, what is happening? And they're like, oh, like, this is just the max int size. Like, obviously, it's going to be negative. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, oh, like, and I think there's going to be encoding, like, I can't tell you how many, I just remember that one, but there's been so many moments like that where, like, if I just asked for help, I would have just, like, saved so much time. And, like, at the end of the day, like Krishna was saying, like, it's asking for help is not showing weakness. It's just, like, showing that you're willing to grow and willing to learn. And so, like, I think, like, getting into that mindset for me has always been kind of tough. But, like, at the end of the day, I think it's really beneficial to see things through that perspective.
So funny coincidence, actually, the first thing I didn't see was also network programming.
Okay.
Yeah, that was funny. I think one of the things that I learned from working on the hackathon, and sort of the most surprising things, is that, and it sounds quite obvious, but you won't get something unless you ask. And sometimes it can be very fearful for you to ask. It's like, I want to contact this person for X reason to get Y results, and I am afraid to do so because I will look bad, or I don't know how to write, or if I do it, I'm going to get a no, right? And sometimes at least the hardest thing for me, which took, like, I guess 2 weeks to get over because it's quite trivial, and, like, you sort of, like, start to, like, scoff at yourself for being so childish, is that the worst thing that can really happen is they're going to say no, which, depending on entrepreneurship, is going to happen 90% of the time anyways, or, like, 99% of the time anyways, as Betsy can probably attest. So, like, you might as well just go and ask. Right, and so also another crazy thing that was just, like, crazy for me is, like, what we did is what people in the actual startup world do. They reach out to people, they ask for support, they sell their idea, they sell their vision, and they convince other people to believe in them. And so that is what the world is about. It's about creating value and selling others on that value. So I just thought that was sort of a crazy thing that happened from my experience in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's kind of related also to leadership, and you guys have alluded to leading. A lot of you have alluded to being parts of organizations. Can you guys talk about what kind of friendships and what kind of experiences you've benefited that couldn't have done without, like, a fairly big group of people? Because some of these things are small groups, like 2 or 3 people on a research team, but some of these things, like the hackathon, it's like you feel like you're part of a community. And do you think you've been part of several different types of communities that, you know, maybe even weren't aware of before, but, like, you kind of, like, suddenly realize there's this big group of people? And also in college, I'd like to hear about, like, that as well. Anybody want to start with that, or Willie, maybe first?
So I actually got involved in student government. It's a long story, but it's sort of striking to think that, and it really gave me, being in student government gave me insight on sort of the process behind which change is made. And MIT is very large and slow, has a lot of money under it, and plenty of students. It's not a large college, but it definitely is sizable, and it has a population, a sizable population of grad students as well. But I guess being in a leadership position is not easy. Not to say not to say that it's about being representative or about hearing out the rest of the student body, because it is. But sort of enacting change and sort of fighting for the vision or the projects that you want to see implemented in the community, or the changes you want to see, can be tough. But it is rewarding once you finally pull something through, and maybe you walk by. I had some friends who were working on this. I helped in a team very briefly, but it was for a career fair, and we were trying to get more small startups and companies and nonprofits and companies that wouldn't usually come to the college to talk about themselves and to recruit students. It was very rewarding to actually walk in the day of the event and look at the list of the companies that came and see the percentage that we were able to recruit that were different from last year. So I don't know. It can be tough, but it is rewarding. And leadership is by no means easy, but it does have effects. And not everyone is a leader, but it is important that there are leaders.
What about activities also for the other panelists, maybe that you weren't the leader in, but like you really attached now and maybe you haven't mentioned before? Are there any examples? And one of the things that I haven't heard a lot about is like you're BYSO, or all three of you, right? Like other clubs that you're in. Can you guys also mention maybe a bit of that? Or we can go down the line.
What would you like us to focus on? What would be most effective?
I think a lot of people asked, for example, what other activities were you in besides programming?
So, yeah, I play in 2 orchestras. I'm in the Boston Philharmonic Youth Orchestra and then the Boston Youth Symphony. Would you like me to talk about my experience there, or?
We don't really have that much time.
Yeah.
Just laundry list for now, yeah.
Ooh.
Or short laundry list.
Short laundry list. Other than coding, I volunteered a lot through high school. I'm honestly blanking out.
Wait, are we listing extracurriculars?
Yeah, like people are asking what.
They ask about like connection to your community, right?
Wait, are we talking about community or are we listing extracurriculars?
We can do it.
Okay, I got one. All right.
I mean, I have a sort of, this is an anecdote I was trying to give earlier, but I forgot. But it's not really about like any particular community, but it's just sort of like, as mentioned, like a connection to community. So one thing that happened to me a couple of weeks ago that was a really big thing to me, it sounds really stupid, but I talked to this old man sitting next to me on the train ride to New Jersey. And so this is, so this sounds really stupid, but at the time it was like a really big deal to me because it was something that before I used to be like really, I don't know, it was hard for me. Like when you see like a stranger, it's hard to start a conversation with them. And I was someone who's like sort of shy around new people, pretty awkward as a person, and like to start this conversation was a big deal. And he turned out to be like some Olympic track coach, so there's that. But anyways, so the reason I think a huge part of the reason I was able to do this was because my experience with largely Metro Hacks, having the experience of like just repeatedly reaching out to different people, trying to connect with them, and like repeatedly getting no's and being like, that's the worst that can happen. There's nothing to it. Because previously, when I was in like middle school and before, all of the things I've done in school, I did a fair amount of like competitive math and like other activities earlier. So I lived in a world where if I did something right, then I would achieve success as a result. And then through like doing CS, I entered Times, and I entered a world where it's like you can do everything right, and there just might not be something interesting there. Like this is what research is. I got a year's worth of negative results. It was fantastic. And then I joined Metro Hacks, and it was like I can do everything right, and people just sometimes don't read their emails. Like, and obviously these are things that I could have attained through another extracurricular, another focus other than tech and computer science. But I know that for me, these things were made possible because I liked computer science, and that opened a lot of opportunities to me. And there were just, like, I didn't even have to try for a lot of these things. They just happened, and I'm really lucky to have been able to do these things. And they've changed, like, it's changed the way I connect to connect to people around me. It's changed the way I am as a person, and I think that's probably the most valuable part to me.
I think that a lot as you start to do your college applications, you start to build up this pressure that like everything I did was for this. And I will just like to say college applications are extremely important because it's a very big part of your academic experience, but it's also very good to think longer term. And as Betsy said, sort of the skills that you learn, at least through entrepreneurship, about being able to talk with other people, also helped me greatly. I think she talked about sort of being like, I'm not shy, however, my speech is very socially awkward. So I definitely talk in a way that most people would not relate to in general, just because like for some reason I use vocabulary that is high in times that do not require it, and I can't really stop. I've tried, but like it's very hard for me to talk in simple terms. And so like being an entrepreneur has sort of like forced me as to when I am having a conversation with someone who I have no idea who's the background from, I have to be able to converse in such a way that they like me reasonably enough to invest in me. And it's true, like, you know, if you cannot convince another person to support your vision, you will have a very difficult future. And so sort of, I guess, anecdote about this is sort of, as when you do it written, it also helps you sort of to go out and speak with people. And so at an entrepreneurship and startup event I went to, I was actually able to raise a considerable amount of cash on the spot. Like I think like $3,000 or $4,000 just from connects that I made there and from people that I was able to like form a bond with. And so that would have been like 80 emails, and I got it in like half an hour of like an event. So it's very important to also develop your social skills and to work on connecting with other people in a meaningful way beyond the hi, hello, how are you, oh, we're all good, which is, I think, not living your life on autopilot.
Okay. It's 10 o'clock, or it's a little past 10, so I'm going to try to now go to questions that were emailed to us or sent on the live feed. And so I'll just read one, and then I'm just going to pick some kind of at random that seem to be like, you know, along a variety of different categories. And then you guys can just maybe raise a hand and then answer them. We'll do this for the remainder of the time. So one question was, I guess Vishnu explained Mad Club, and you're Mad Lab, and you're explaining AV Idea Lab. So let me see. What was the camp first?
Me?
That you attended with the
sailboats? Okay, that was Boston Leadership Institute.
Yeah.
They have a variety of programs. They have like a neuroscience one and other ones, but the one that I specifically did was the engineering camp. And I believe the same person is still instructing it, Mrs. Rampazio. So you should definitely look into that because I enjoyed it a lot.
Okay. One was, I'm a 10th grader and I'm looking at CS classes next semester. I don't actually know which school this person goes to, so I really can't say, but let's say you're looking to start CS and you're not in 8th grade, where a lot of you were when you started, but you're starting later. What would you recommend?
KTBYTE.
Yeah.
So I guess in addition,
slightly longer answer.
I guess in addition to classes like KTBYTE, if you're AP Computer Science in schools, if your school offers it, is usually, like my school had a really good class. By the time I took AP Computer Science, I guess from taking KTBYTE classes, I'd known most of the curriculum, so the class was not hard in itself. But the most valuable part of that class was practicing like the kind of like basic programming techniques like over and over until you're like very good at them. And for a beginner, it's like the curriculum, at least in my school, I can speak for like in high school, but I hope other schools have like a similar setup, is that you start off kind of easy learning about arrays and loops and whatever, and you kind of progress through learning about more advanced data structures. So it's a really good course for a beginner to take.
Mm-hmm.
Also, aside from in-school classes, I think one thing that's really valuable for coding in particular is just making things, like build a website, fail, like build a second website, fail a little better. Like this is like, it's such a fast way to learn, and especially if you're like building for a purpose. I think hackathons are a great way to learn. I went to a hackathon and with two other friends. I was the only one who had ever used JavaScript, and I hadn't used that much of it then. None of us had ever touched Node.js, which is server-side JavaScript. And we went in and we were like, you know what? We want to build a multiplayer game with Node.js. So over the course of 24 hours, we learned Node. My two friends also learned JavaScript, which was pretty impressive. And we built the game, and we like, yeah, it was fun.
Did any of you apply for summer internships?
Well,
Besides MIT Prize?
well, actually, no. I did one before my sophomore year, but at Harvard's School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. But by far my most valuable were MIT primes. But like I guess other things. I did a lot of primes work during the summers of my sophomore and junior year. So I guess someone else can speak for that.
Yes, so I did not do MIT primes, so I had to go elsewhere for internships. I worked at Harvard Med in a computational neuroscience lab. So that was my internship going into senior year. What would you like me to focus on? What would be best?
Well,
How I got it? How I...
yeah, like,
Okay.
also I know a little bit about your interests. You want to do stuff related to medical research,
Yes.
which is a little bit different than some of the other people. One of the questions we just got was, how would you recommend finding research programs or finding these opportunities?
Sure.
So how did you find these opportunities?
So I sent an email to professors that I wanted to work with my resume, and I got positive responses, so I picked the person I wanted to work with.
But what he's leaving out there is that he sent like hundreds of emails.
That's
to
actually
people.
completely incorrect. I sent
Oh, you
12
did?
emails,
Okay.
and I
Okay, well, I had a slightly different experience with this. I tried the cold emailing too, but I got 0 responses. So
I would say that while you're looking for internships, it helps to have actual accomplishments. So if you
They're related.
wow.
Just for
that came out a lot worse. I apologize. You're quite accomplished. So moving on, I know a lot of my friends sort of tried to do people in my school tried to do the cold email approach, but if you don't have a lot of experience in sort of an academic context, it can be hard to win positions. And even then, if you don't have a lot of experience, it can be very hard to do significant work while you're there. So you might strike it lucky, but once you get there and maybe so far over your head, you can't actually make a meaningful contribution. So my classes at KTBYTE were probably one of the reasons why I was offered positions in many computational labs.
I guess you did some teaching also, right? With
Yes.
Right?
So yeah, I've been an instructor and a teaching assistant. Am I leaving anything out that's important?
Well, I'll switch to another question. This one I have no idea. Did anybody apply to grants or financial aid with computer science as part of the essay or application with any success? No? Yes? Okay.
I don't recall if there's computer science in the application, but it was successful. So.
Well, you applied to a grant or a
Scholarship.
A scholarship? Okay. So, I don't remember. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You should apply for those because I guess the cost of your time filling it out, which if there's an essay, sure you gotta write an essay. Maybe it's some work. It can be very worth the return that you get back.
Just if you're going to be applying to scholarship, one thing that you should check before is to look at your the school that you're going to, their policy for outside scholarship money, because a lot of schools, what they'll do is there's a certain amount of money that you can get deducted from scholarships, and if you get more outside scholarship money from that, they'll just start deducting it from your financial aid, basically. So yeah, that's a thing, so be careful.
Okay. One person asked, was Yuzuko a key component of your college application for any of you?
I would say it was probably one of my few national awards, so that's probably quite important. Like as Willie discussed, when the admission officer, like you have to think about it, like they probably spent like 4 minutes on your file.
Hundreds in the stack.
Yeah, they have hundreds in the stack, right? So the information, the more words you write, the less they look at, right? So when you are writing your sort of your accomplishments and stuff like that, the scale of the awards you get is very important for proving your worth to an admissions officer.
Also, speaking of the USACO, the nice thing about a lot of coding competitions is that the competitions themselves are very accessible. For instance, the USA Computing Olympiad, it's a national competition, and you can do it having never like gone through any sort of qualifying runs, and you can also just do it like sitting on your bed on your computer. It's an online competition. Yeah. They just give you a time slot and you do it, and like you don't even like obviously you need some experience to actually like do the questions, but you don't need to. I think USAMO that's a math competition, right? You need to go through like different qualifying measures just to be able to compete at that level. So that's something I really appreciate. Also, having to go places.
I didn't know about Olympiads. Or even, actually one of the things I regret is I didn't do science fair because I didn't know it existed until like junior year. Maybe that's bad on me. But Olympiads, I also did not know about or / did not prepare for until high school. And if you try to like hedge your bets on doing something like USAMO, it will be very, very, very difficult because there are like people who have been doing it since they're like 4. And they're like, the math competition. Whereas the computing Olympiad, just like the research, the barrier to entry is lower than the barrier to entry for math. Well, in my opinion, I think that like they're both equally like at the higher levels difficult and equally rewarding, but maybe other people see it differently. Like I know some like math Olympiad people hate on the computing Olympiad, and I generally don't like them. But like especially for like gold and platinum, the competitions are quite difficult. But the like amount of time to take to get there can be less if you are smart and apply your time.
A lot less is what you're implying, right?
Yes, yeah. Like not like I've trained for this for 7 years and I've never like failed on a problem. It's like I like took this contest a couple of times and I did well because like I studied it and it was fun.
Now you didn't get it. It wasn't easy the first time around, right?
No. So yeah, I did not progress in the Olympiad until after a year of competition, which I think is actually very similar to many of the people I know. There's usually this learning curve with the computing Olympiad. So like the first 3 or 4 contests you take, it's sort of like 0 or like 100 is like I think the easiest score to get. You'll get like out of 1,000. You'll get like 100 a bunch of times, and you'll be like and then like you'll do like the first contest that you do well. Like I like barely passed the qualification, and I was like, oh okay, this is good. And then after that, I just kind of jumped the levels.
Also, there's a lot of contests, at least for USACO. So it's not like some competitions where it's like 1 year you get 1 chance. USACO gives you about 4 chances every year, and each one is basically an equivalent competition to move up a rank. So.
They get harder as the year progresses. So.
So they do?
Yes.
Benjamin Lee asks, who are your role models?
Elon Musk.
Going down the line?
Actually, I guess not necessarily like role models in traditional sense, but like I knew a lot of older students through stuff like tennis team, which is for like students for all 4 years. So I just learned from a lot of people. Like I learned like a lot from older people, like what they did, if they made mistakes, I could learn from those. So I guess it's important in your school to seek out older students and talk to them.
When you guys were starting out, how much time did you guys have to spend on CS? And also how much time are you spending now? Because one of the things that you're implying, Patrick, is that in the beginning, it wasn't too intimidating. The barrier of entry was low. Can you quantify what you mean by what the barrier of entry was? How much work did you do?
Sure. So I probably spent like 6 hours a week on like learning sort of doing coding projects. And then once I progressed through the USACO, like Krishna, I also started to value other things, so the time dropped. and it usually became like 2 hours once a month. And I just like study a little bit before the competition and go for it and see what happened. And I guess luckily I did okay.
But this is on top of classes.
This is on top of like all the other stuff that I do. So yeah, I would say if you're spending 45 minutes a day coding something that makes you happy, then that's pretty much all the time that you need to spend, at least in my opinion, to do well.
I guess when it started, it was like very similar. I did classes. If I did a class, you have classes, homework, whatever, like for like a CS class, and I did stuff just exactly what you said. Junior and senior year, I spent like a ton of time every week. Everyone else who did research can attest. Like it's very time consuming certain times of year, and it's like a lot of coding. So I guess I did programming in that way. It was like I think it was like around 10 hours average a week, not including like the summers. So that was a bunch of practice for that. I guess we do a research program that's like Prime's is typical.
So the most popular question we got was, how do I get to Ivy League school, which we already kind of went past. The second most popular question we got, and we just got it again, because many of our audience members are parents, is how do I get my kids interested, or perhaps another way to phrase it is, what was the relationship you had with your parents when it came to, or mentors, when it came to them pushing you versus you pushing yourself? Is there a balance? Is one way better? Are there different styles? Do you guys have any stories about that?
Yeah, so like I said, my school is kind of a math and science school, so they kind of force all of us to take CS in 6th grade. Honestly, I hated it because we were being forced to do it, and like the teacher was bad. We weren't really doing anything. We were just learning about the history of CS and like bugs and circuits or what. I don't even know what it was, but I just did not like it at all. And so when my mom found out about KTBYTE, and she said, oh, you should go to this camp. And I was like, no, I hate computer science. I'm not going to go to a summer camp for it. But I went, and I kind of went in like a little bit like, oh, I'm probably not going to like this. But then we were actually like doing games and stuff. Obviously, we weren't only doing games. So we actually learned a lot. And I learned basically all my Java from KTBYTE. So I learned a lot, but we also did projects that kind of got me really interested in the applications of coding. And from that point on, I actually liked CS. So I think as parents, I feel like if you're having your kid do something and it doesn't look automatically fun off the bat, they'll probably not love it right away. But I think, well, you're already all here, so you know about KTBYTE. But if you haven't sent your kid to a KTBYTE summer camp, you should really do that. Because, okay, I'm not just self-advertising here. I'm saying this because this actually got me interested in CS. So it doesn't have to be a KTBYTE summer camp. Just find something that it's fun and engaging for your kid, but has that kind of coding background in it. And that will get them interested, and then they'll be the ones asking you to do like CS-related stuff, rather than you having to push them through the door of like yet another class or something.
Mm-hmm. Any other stories?
Sure.
Like fun things.
So for the parent-child relationship or mentor-student relationship, I was definitely a late bloomer in sort of all senses of the word. Up until 9th grade, I cared about very little other than like playing outside and sleeping. So I think I can't really lay a finger on what sort of started to catalyze me gaining focus throughout high school. I think that as a parent, when your child is younger, there is a very fine and delicate line between pushing them to discover what they will eventually love and forcing them to consume something that is like homework. So it's very hard to do correctly. For instance, I hated classical music when I was a middle schooler, which is almost hard for me to say now, because now it's like one of the things that I love the most. And that switch sort of happened in 9th grade. So for students that are younger, let's say that you're at the seminar and you're in 7th and 8th grade, I can assure you that you do not know yet what makes you happy. and you will discover many things that will make you happy in high school. And for the parents, it can be very difficult to force your kid into exploring new things while also making sure that your kid is happy. But like as a kid, I would say your child's happiness is very important. And also your students, if the time is right, will eventually come to the realization that they need to focus. For me, it was at the beginning of 9th grade, and then I was very studious, very focused, and sort of my activities and accomplishments followed.
A similar question is towards the kids. Some of the kids were asking on the feed, is coding hard? You know, how do I get better at it? You know, like, you know, how do I like it? Like, speaking to, and I got that in email as well, like, you know, I don't really want to take classes, but my parents are making me attend this thing. So what can you say to your peers?
Okay. Secretly, I'm a big education junkie, and I have a lot of opinions about parenting that will probably affect me when I become an actual parent. But to this, I was reading a book by Seymour Papert, who, besides criticizing like the entire education system as whole, was talking about basically how computers are taught in school. And one of the things that he starts off by talking about math. And he does this by comparing it to a foreign language class and how foreign languages are taught in school. Sure, you get handed a textbook, you need to memorize vocabulary, go through the grammar lessons, you come in, you take your tests, you get a low grade, and then you improve. But he says, maybe if you consider the alternative, how do people learn languages out of the wild? Like, perhaps you, instead of sitting in the French classroom or in the Spanish classroom, you go to France or you go to Spain, and you become immersed, almost as a native speaker, absorbing it from your environment. And I guess he draws a connection to math, where he says the teacher is someone who tries or can help to immerse you and provide you materials to surround yourself so that you can learn the language and pick up all the parts. And he imagines a place called Mathland, hypothetical, where everyone speaks math. And your teacher, being knowledgeable in math, being a native speaker of this math language, can help you learn. And I would almost compare computer science to this as well. So computer science, at the core, people write in programming languages. The key word here is language. Because like any other language, there's a grammar, there's vocabulary, and there's a way the words are put together. But on top of this, there's the concepts and the ideas that you can use this language to express. So for Russian, I know there are many words for a particular shade of blue. And it's interesting to think that in any other language, it would be hard to pinpoint that shade of blue if you didn't have a word for it. And as tying this back to computer science, like as any language, being immersed in it and being excited about the possibilities of what you can convey is a very powerful way to learn. And especially the part about immersion, where you surround yourself with materials, with people who speak the language, who can get you up to speed. That is critical. And I think that it's the role of a teacher and your fellow friends who are interested, when you spend time with them, to not only engage you and provoke you, but to take you on as a mentor and encourage you and basically help ease you into this new world of programming. But ultimately, you're going to need something to say. You're going to want to find your own voice and your own authentic self in what you want to use this language to convey. Because after all, it's a language. It's a means, not necessarily an end. And if you can find something that really lights you on fire, then adding computer science and finding computer science and adding it to the mix will only make the fire grow stronger.
Adding on to that, just very quickly.
Your sister go.
Yeah.
Your sister go first.
Okay. Kind of translating that into like 7th grader language, because that was very elevated. It's very nice. It was very deep. For 7th graders, okay, so if your parents are like, you should take the CS class, and you log in every week and you're like, man, this is so boring. Don't think that, because it might be boring now, but like what you're learning is not going to be boring. And I feel like if you think, oh, I have to do this, it's really not something that you have to do, and you will appreciate it later. But I guess in terms of just like finding a way to enjoy it now, just find a project that interests you, because like I said before, my Mario game that I made was probably the best thing I've ever done. So just find like a topic that you like. If you like games, find a game that you want to recreate. If you like analyzing how many times the word does used in a book, then I don't know. I don't know why you're saying that.
Lily's like, I'd be guilty of that.
Yeah. Well, regardless, just find something you like and find a way to code that in CS, and you will eventually come to like programming in general. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's oh, sorry.
Oh, I want to say, yeah, if it's the humanities or the fine arts or the liberal arts or the hard sciences,
Music.
soft sciences with music, it's all across the board. But I kind of want to segue into Betsy and Patrick for the last 4 minutes, because we're getting toward the end. And we want, you guys are doing mentoring and organizing the Metro Hacks event. Can you pitch it to the students?
Yeah.
And the parents.
So one of the things that Ben just brought up is my parents are making me go to the CS class, and I'm not really interested. And a hackathon will completely change your perception of CS. So as you start to get older, you start to think to know what you want to do in your future. Many college students who go to their first hackathon, and they've done their applications, and they're like, I want to study biology, or I want to study writing. They go to their first hackathon, and the day that they go back to their college campus, they change their major to computer science. And the reason goes very directly back to Willie, and which he says is full immersion into something. And a hackathon is a very low investment into 24 hours of full immersion. Especially for Metro Hacks, it's free. It'll cost you nothing to attend. We feed you so you're happy. There are workshops and mentors to make sure that you can not only learn. Let's say you've never coded something before and you want to do an iOS app. There will be a workshop for that. Let's say that you're already very high level and you want to push your understanding. We have very high level workshops on virtual reality and sort of like cognitive machine learning for like applications into your projects. Everything that you could possibly need to build your project will be there for you, and you'll be surrounded by 250 of your motivated and equally intelligent peers who want to build something amazing. And this event is all about doing something for the first time. And I guarantee you, if you attend, if you haven't loved CS before, you will for the first time.
And it's fun. Like my one of the hackathons I attended recently, I went with a couple of friends. One of my friends, another friend really had to convince her to go because she was like, haven't really done that much coding, like not that into it. And we went, and there's people doing amazing things. There are people like doing machine learning to like study all these crazy things. And I mean, we built a game involving fried chicken, and like firstly, it's you're learning in a setting that's actually fun. Like I have all these videos of us just like laughing our heads off at whatever crazy thing we were doing at that time. There are hackathons where people go and they learn to like build things, but like obviously you can learn to build by like making a robot that does something crazy, or you can learn to build by making a 3D printer that prints cheese. Like it's a setting where you want to do something and you can make that thing happen, and you'll get all the benefits of learning to do that thing. And
on a quick plug of what we have, we have 3D printers.
Also, you need to plug where this is, because although we'll send a notification to people, where is it?
Sure.
When is it?
Yeah.
What time?
So the event is at the Warrior Ice Arena in Boston Landing, which is right outside of Boston. It's on May 20th to 21st.
Next week.
Which is next week. It's next weekend. You guys can submit an application online, which we prefer. However, if something like random happens and you're able to attend the event last minute, you can also walk on. Registration is going to be at 10 a.m. and the event will run until about 1:30 the next day. So you should bring a sleeping bag, you should bring a change of clothes, toiletries.
But you don't have to stay there, right?
You do have to stay overnight.
Oh, you do?
Yes. So
Okay.
the event is for 24 hours. You can you cannot leave after 9 p.m.
Okay.
And that's for safety reasons. It also makes parents a lot happier. Yeah, parents in the audience are nodding yes. And it's just so that you are fully immersed for 24 hours. Quick plug about the really cool things that we have. Microsoft is coming for opening ceremonies. We're having people from Staples Technology coming to present, Salesforce, HubSpot, Acquia. These are all high-level technology companies, and the executives who are coming to present have net worths into the millions. So for people who are interested in entrepreneurship, very easy to network with really high-powered people here. Like Betsy said about having fun, we'll have 3D printers, we'll have virtual reality headsets. There's going to be an online capture the flag game, which is a really cute CS fun type thing. The weather's supposed to be beautiful, so there's going to be some outside Frisbee games because dorks like us love Frisbee. Am I missing anything?
Well, if you ever want like free, basically essentially tutoring from like a Microsoft computer science like employee.
Yeah,
Free.
that's the level of mentorship that we're like providing there.
Yeah, like,
and you also
there
get
are
like
mentors who will come and like if they like these people are dedicating their time and they want to help and they'll. I've had experience where a mentor just like came and like basically stayed with us for like 20 hours and just like supported us throughout the entire project, taught us everything we needed to know. It was great.
you will be contacted. Most of you will be contacted for internship opportunities after the event. And if you like play your cards right, it's very easy to get a high-level internship.
Quick questions about the mentor hacks. Can middle schoolers enter? Can kids under 12 go? I want to say
No, so the event unfortunately is for kids who are from 13 to 18.
13 to 18. Okay. We're pretty much out of time because we're actually over. Any last comments from our panelists?
Just to continue off, like mentorship and mentor hack, I guess it's really awesome to have someone help you, have a mentor who's actually worked on or has created the very coding platform that you're trying to learn, and that's just incredible that people come, like the level of caring that mentors will give and the level of people who will come.
Also, the crew necks you'll get are beautiful. That's who designed that.
Hey.
So we're totally out of time. We're actually over time. So I want to thank you guys for coming. Can we get an applause from the live audience? And if you in the audience online has further questions, you can feel free to send an email to any of the emails that sent you original emails. And if you want to go to Metro Hacks, I'll load up the website before we head off. metrohacks.co. Yeah. And you guys can take a look at that. Thank you everybody for attending, and good night.